name tag. I'm somebody now. I know, that's what I said.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you. My name is Mike Kelly. I'm the Chair of Board of County Commissioners for Johnson County, Kansas. We are here on November 20th, 2025 for a Committee of the Whole session. All commissioners are present at this time for this Committee of the Whole. We are here today to discuss zoning regulations and proposed updates to the zoning regulations for Johnson County, Kansas. Here in front of us, we have Jay Leipzig, Michelle Leininger, and Elizabeth Garvin to discuss these zoning regulations. We will hear a presentation and then have an opportunity for discussion and direction. So without further ado, Mr. Leipzig.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Jay Leipzig, the Planning Director. Yes, and I appreciate the introduction to Elizabeth Garvin with Clarion Associates and Michelle Leininger with planning staff. And Michelle has kind of been our lead planner on this project. And then also Zoe Brown is behind me as well. And Zoe will be filling in on some details with short-term rental regulations as well. So we have several things we would like to talk with you about this afternoon at this Committee of the Whole, but all focused around our new zoning regulations and the work that has been ongoing for this project. This is a significant effort. This is something that we haven't updated our regulations cohesively since 1994 when they originally adopted. We have done it piecemeal and done periodic updates throughout the years, but this is an entirely comprehensive update of that document. And so there's a lot of parts to it, and if you think of the comprehensive plan, it provides the vision of what the county could look like. The zoning regulations provide the tools to implement that plan. And so it's really, this is the nuts and bolts of how we do things in terms of planning, procedures and processes, our zoning districts and that type of thing. So it's not the most exciting topic, but it's something that's very, very important and something that will have a profound impact on the county as we move forward into the future. As I mentioned, several topics we'll be talking about today in terms of the regulations, one being short-term rentals, also long-duration energy storage facilities. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the possible zoning board consolidation. And so we have fairly significant topics to discuss, but I also wanted to, before I get into that too much, I also wanted to reference the packet or the memo that was included in your packet that provides an overview of topics for discussion for the Committee of the Whole today. I thought that was very well done because it kind of points out the main items that we'll be discussing this afternoon in more detail. As I mentioned, we're talking for the first portion, zoning regulations dealing with short-term rentals, recommended standards, and the other key point of that would be the timing for adoption of those regulations. And then the second point is long-term or long-duration energy storage facilities. We do have a white paper that was from the Berkeley Group that was included in your packet. The Berkeley Group is a consultant that has helped us develop our utility-scale solar regulations. They're nationally recognized in doing work in this type of field and additional research. So we do have a white paper that we attached as part of the packet as part of a basis for some of the talking points today. And then also we'll be talking about recommendations and options for those regulations, what that might look like, and giving you some recommendations moving forward. So with that, I'm going to turn over the presentation to Elizabeth Garvin with Clarion Associates that's going to provide an overview of the zoning regulation updates to this point and some of the most recent activities.
Thank you, Jay. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm Elizabeth Garvin with Clarion Associates.
Ms. Garvin, I apologize for interrupting you, but I thought I'd do it at the beginning. We are having a little bit of technical difficulty right now. This is the first time in this room with new microphones, new audio visual. Can you try your best to speak closer to the microphone? There's an echo that is coming through that may be affecting the ability of some to hear. So thank you very much for your patience. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I wear hearing aids, so I'm constantly adjusting volume. So it's fine with me. Thanks for the instructions. How does this sound to everybody? Sound okay?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. So I'm Elizabeth Garvin. I am an attorney and planner and a director at Clarion Associates, and I've been having the privilege, actually, of working with your staff to update the regulations. This is a second update on our first chunk of drafting, which is zoning districts and uses. That's kind of the core of any land development code, and so we wanted to make sure that we're getting this right. So on the update today, we'll talk about the districts and the uses, talk about what's next, and then we'll move into the short-term rentals and the long-term energy storage regulations that Jay was flagging a second ago. This one or this one?
This one right here.
That one right there. Thank you. Do one more. How about that? Okay. So we start out with a statement of project goals. We use the same goals when we're speaking with members of the community, when we're speaking with the Board of County Commissioners. We want to make sure that we've got everyone grounded in the same idea of what the county's up to. So the goal of this project is to update the land use regulations to implement the Johnson County Rural Comprehensive Plan. So a few things we want to do in there is make the regulations more user-friendly. We want everyone to be able to basically understand what's going on in the regulations. It's still a legal document, but we can sure go a long way to making it friendlier and more accessible. We want to modernize the regulations using a community-based process. So first step is to draft the regulations. Second step is to get the community involved. It's easier to let people respond to the entire set of updated regulations. So that'll be coming soon here. We want to give the county modern regulations that are tied to infrastructure capacity. With the county in particular, where the infrastructure goes, the development follows, or vice versa, depending on who's doing it. But those decisions about how you spend public funds and how development takes place are critical to the regulatory process. So we want to make sure that's involved. Also, as Jay and I were discussing earlier, counties tend to get those big infrastructure projects in terms of like energy infrastructure that we're going to talk about today. So we want to make sure that the county's in the right place to regulate those projects at the scale at which they come to you. We want to incorporate predictable and flexible standards. Those things actually, weirdly, do go together. So the goal is to make it so that more applications can be decided at a level of staff review with appropriate standards so that an applicant can get the information they need quickly and that things don't have to always get elevated to a zoning board or planning commission or board of county commissioners. We have things being decided in the right location. So we've been working, and particularly in this section that we're about to talk about, to get the code there, to do the work a code can do. We want to reduce conflicts and inconsistencies with the code, the age of Johnson counties, which came in right after Kansas changed the enabling authority for planning and zoning. So in '91, in Kansas, we expanded what communities can do, and kind of everyone jumped in and tried out new stuff. We've given it enough time. Some of the new stuff can be cleaned up. It's a little dated at this point. We want to integrate and tailor best practices from Kansas and around the nation. So we want to make sure that Johnson County has the tools it needs to do the work that you all do. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that the county has legally sound and defensible regulations. When you're telling an applicant what they can do, it needs to be in the right place that you can defend it if need be. We prefer for you to not have to do that, but we want to make sure the code can get you there. So here's our drafting schedule. We are in task 3, draft updated regulations. So we've been doing that daily, weekly, and monthly, depending on who you ask. And we are through the first third of that. We're hoping to get a little speed up on the rest of it. But the first third was the important part. And so it was great to get everyone from staff's input. So next we can put it out for public input. When the code is fully drafted, and that'll be March, April, somewhere in there, we'll start going out for more community outreach. We have done a few things, not a ton at this point, but that's something that we'll be focused on as we have the regulations to move forward. So some things to talk about today, and if you're feeling deja vu, we have covered some of these previously. So this is just us saying, hey, the work continues. We want you to know where it stands in case somebody asks you questions. So we've been working on the zoning districts, base, special, and overlay. the consolidated table of uses. Really been digging deep in the use-specific standards. I'll talk about that in a minute, and then always cleaning up measurements and definitions. So for the zoning districts, a couple of big changes. We're moving away from the use of planned districts. So that dates back to that 1991 statutory update for County Planning Authority, where the state said cities and counties can use planned unit development. So you'll see from that period of time a lot of codes. It's very similar to Johnson County's. I think Overland Park worked the same way. Leawood may have had some of that. We have all of these planned districts. Over time, kind of as communities, we've learned to use that a little differently, and we didn't need that particular slice and dice that existed in the code. So we're consolidating that. We're not, I don't think we're 100% getting rid of planned districts. Sometimes there's a project where that's the exact right process to use, but we're making it possible for applicants to come through without that extra layer of what are you changing, what are you doing, and just saying, hey, this development is appropriate in this location, and here are the standards for it. So we'll move away from planned districts. You'll see more discussion about base districts. They'll be more limited in number. So we'll have a few residential, some commercial, and some employment. And they reflect existing development in the county and then that future as we see it through the Johnson County Rural Plan. Comprehensive. I just put those words in totally the wrong order. I made a new plan for you. How about that? Okay. So some other things you'll see, we've been working with staff to make sure that we have the dimensions correct and the layout images correct. So this is really in the weeds sort of work. Our goal is not to add non-conformities. So in changing the code, we don't want to put people in a more frozen position with regard to development. We want to make sure that we put standards in place that allow people to continue to reinvest in their properties. Why do we spend time on the images? So this image for rural residential and this updated image for commercial. We want to make the code more visual. And we want to be able to have conversations with applicants about what their project is going to look like. And so a piece of that is putting sort of bulky images in the regulations that say, you know, this is roughly what complies with this district. So this is a starting place for conversation about how you might see development here. So this is a commercial district, has a commercial building. We're saying in this image, it's going to come up to the road a little bit, parking probably on the side and in the rear. Some of that will vary site by site. But this also allows your staff, when they're working with applicants, to have a conversation where they have a shared picture between the two of them, not I picture something in my head and you picture something in your head. So that's why we want to make sure these work properly. Open Space and Parks District. So the purpose of this district is to really, if we jump to the bottom, to allow easier implementation of the Johnson County Parks and Rec District Park Master Plans. We want to make that more of a plug and play into its own district for those parks within the county. This is a one thing does two things kind of setup, which seems a little weird. We have an open space and parks district. We can also have open space and parks in other districts. So a park can be a use and can be a district. This will mostly be for the larger parks and areas that the county may want to protect over time. All right, so talked about planned development district a little bit earlier. We have been spending time with staff, making sure that as we take these apart, that we capture the right dimensional standards. Then we've replaced the multiple different districts with one kind of umbrella plan district. So if an applicant wants to come in and their project is really appropriate for a plan district, they'll still have a process to do that and a way to move forward through staff and the county. So getting close to the end of these specific slides. One place where we've been focused over the last month or so is on use-specific standards. These are predictable standards for uses where when an applicant comes in, the county wants to see you do X thing every time. So I like to use an example of doggy daycare, and we might say, when you have doggy daycare, you must have fencing around any outdoor spaces, and you must be separated sufficiently from residential uses, so dogs barking are not going to annoy the neighbors. We're going to see that with every single doggy daycare. So we want to make sure that we articulate those standards and put them in the regulations so they don't have to come in as a special condition or something along those lines. So in this case, for the uses that we've been working on, the use-specific standards for, most recently we've been talking about outdoor storage. We have gone through and talked about other projects in the county, what they've needed, what we want to see as standards that are more generally applicable, and put those in the regulation. So an applicant can see from a predictability standpoint what they're going to have to comply with. And so staff can help guide them in the same way project after project. And so when this project gets approved, no one has to wonder, hey, did someone say something about the fencing? It's in the code. So we are just wrapping that up. Those standards will be in place for everyone to take a look at and comment on. So that's the big, kind of the big update about where we are in the drafting. I will say, before Jay moves into long-term energy storage and short-term rentals, that we have been working with the county's communications team to make this draft publicly available for comment. I think we're still working out one or two of the wrinkles in how the websites come together for commenting purposes, and I think we should have that up tomorrow, if not tomorrow, Monday. So then if people are asking you questions or you want to direct them to the county website, they can go take a look at that draft. And it's open for commenting, so people can go through and find their topic and talk about it. So I think that's it. Jay, you going to take it from here? Nope, that's me. Never mind. Sorry. Okay, I'm trying to get rid of my last slide. So what do we do next? We move into the development standards, and so the next round of drafting, as you can see from the list, will be parking and landscaping, signs, lighting, environmentally sensitive lands or places that could potentially have hazards on them, and subdivision design standards. So we'll go through the same process, look at the plan, look at the existing regulations, work with staff to understand where they see problems with regulations, update to capture best practices, and put a draft together. So I think we're looking at a public draft of that in January. That might be mid to late January. We'll see, because we do run into a lot of fun topics in this category, always in parking and usually in lighting. And so we want to make sure we get that in the right place. We'll come give you another update, and then we'll see what kind of feedback we get on that. So last up, we'll do procedures. And we'll have the consolidated draft of all of the pieces available in spring of 2026. Thanks, Jay. Sorry to run over on that.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. One thing I was going to mention is on the plan districts. Elizabeth had mentioned that they have seldom been used. In the past, our plan districts were so prescribed and so difficult. I say difficult, just regimented. You had to have everything absolutely included, whatever use you were doing, and it really was so cumbersome for developers. And so what we're proposing with the base districts and the overlays, it provides additional flexibility. Also with the use table is very clear on what is required for applicants, whereas we oftentimes now we go through a conditional use permit process, and those things can vary. And with the idea that want the board to know you still have control and a lot of aspects for the review, but it just will make these type of applications so much easier for staff to review and also for developers to complete, so they know exactly what is required as they go through this process. And hopefully, at least I assume that process will also be faster as well. We're trying to streamline those requirements and those objectives. Chair, I was going to ask if you prefer, have questions at the end, or if you want to just ask questions in the middle, or how would your preference would be?
So let's have, this is a good off-ramp at this point. We'll take a quick round of questions specific to the presentation thus far, holding questions on the other topics at this time. One quick question for Ms. Garvin. Thank you very much for the presentation, by the way, and thanks for the work that you're doing here. In terms of use-specific standards, I do see a lot of value there not only from a knowledge standpoint for our applicants, but for our staff. How many use-specific standards are we contemplating within this update?
We're at 15, 20, probably somewhere in there. We don't try to capture everything. We just try to do the uses, well, we try to do the uses that have the most amount of conflict around them. So where an applicant, may want to do less than what the county wants to see, we try to get specific with that. But I will pull it up while these guys are talking and give you an answer to that. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's not in the hundreds. It is closer to in the 20s. And then to let an applicant know how to find it, we take the use table that Jay is talking about and we put a hyperlink in it. So if you're doing the doggy daycare, there's a link that takes you to the standards so you can find it.
But it sounds to me like there's great value in that, and so I appreciate the intention there. As we move forward with Module 2, subdivision design standards, I know as we think about the growth of Johnson County, especially those areas that are on the periphery of our municipal partners, I appreciate the collaboration and the conversations that happen with those municipal partners that we can relatively see a path forward for annexation at some point, and making sure that the standards that we set make municipal service delivery possible into the future and don't unintentionally create problems for future growth in Johnson County. I know you guys are aware and sensitive to that, but I appreciate that intention. Commissioner Allen-Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Well, first of all, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's very detailed, and I feel like you've hit on every point. I know some of the things I was hearing. I'm glad that you put the layouts in there. I think that has been something. I mean, Jay and that has been ongoing. It's more visual for people to understand, especially if you're not in that industry. On the short-term rentals, I do a lot with my family, renting areas. And so I'm glad to see the no single bedrooms. I think that's important. I know that in some of the contracts I've signed, they're very adamant about where the trash is located. I guess that's been an ongoing problem. Glad to see the parking. And then I also have seen limited numbers of people into a dwelling.
And we'll get the opportunity to get to
Oh, I thought we
short-term
went
rentals.
over short-term. I'm sorry.
Not quite yet. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Process question. Could you remind us, Mr. Leipzig, Mr. Leipzig, could you remind us what the public participation process has been so far? How many people and how we notified them to be involved in this? Because changes like this, big or small, sometimes can generate some energy. And I just want to make sure we've had good outreach and good response. Could you give us 30 seconds on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to, Commissioner. We've used a fairly extensive participation process in this. We modeled this after the work that we did on our airport updates just recently. We have a portal on the county's website that provides all of the documents for regard to the plan, including the working draft, notifications for future meetings. We've had, I'm trying to think how many open houses now. It's been at least 3 open houses. And then as we develop the additional modules, so we just completed the open houses for Module 1, Module 2, and Module 3. We'll also have additional open houses in addition to the formal approval process as it goes through to the Planning Commission and then back to this body. We also have our stakeholder group that is working very actively. It's a great kind of a sounding body to talk about ideas and things that they would like to see, and including those folks as well. As the chairman has mentioned, also working with the other cities. We've had, for lack of a better word, kind of informal pizza parties with them, with some of the staff from other cities getting together. We just met with Gardner and Edgerton. Also, we've got one scheduled with the city of Olathe, so we're making those rounds, met with the city of Overland Park. So we're really trying to involve all of those different facets together. But we will continue to, and having everything in this portal has been very helpful. Also getting the word out through our communications team. They've been very helpful in terms of expanding that reach and with press releases as we were able to do that.
But the point I'm trying to get to is, of the people who live in the incorporated areas, do we have 50% penetration, 100%? Have they been touched? Do we know?
I believe, Commissioner, we're trying to. We've talked about it with our zoning boards as well. Any chance any meeting we have, we talk about the process. We had kind of a lower turnout in the Gardner area, but I think we probably had, maybe 25 people or so, 25 to 30. We had about 80 people at our most recent open house down in Stillwell. So it's, there's varying levels there, but we've tried to let people know any opportunity we have about future meetings and what future events that might be out there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Burr.
Yes, and thank you, Chair. And Mr. Lysick, do you mind just moving the microphone?
sorry.
Mic closer to you. I'm just getting a certain level of feedback, so it makes it hard to hear all your words. I'm looking specifically at slides number 10 and number 11. So, and I know when we had the open house in Stillwell, and just to be a little bit responsive to Commissioner Ashcraft's question, so I can only speak to District 3, but in District 3, one of the things we did is try to utilize the communication platforms that the majority of my unincorporated area utilizes is as a way to push out. So and thankfully the chair of the East Zoning Board kind of manages that communication platform. So we utilize their services to push out the notice to the Stillwell open house. I think that helped in generating and having it held. And I know that Commission District 6 also had meetings held in their own district, and I think that makes a difference. I think Commissioner Allenbrand would agree to get turnout if you can hold the open house in the actual geographic area of where people are, so that they can more conveniently attend. So I know you had a sheet up at the zoning open house, and I just want to underscore that I'm understanding this correctly. I appreciate that we're kind of consolidating some of our districts because it can feel a lot when we see all the different coding and are trying to understand the coding. Do we feel comfortable as we've collapsed and consolidated and maybe have a little bit more broader description of the district, that we're not leaving any pieces on the table or that we're grandfathering something in? Because that's the one thing I want to be mindful of, is that as we move down the path and as this eventually becomes our plan, if something pops up that wasn't contemplated but's been in existence pre these changes, what's our approach to dealing with that, so that they're not feeling as though they have to be eliminated because they're no longer contemplated? I kind of want to understand that approach. And then I have one other question for you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think one of the things I touched on is it's not our goal to leave structures in a non-conforming situation. So there will still be a few. If we make changes to this code and there's a structure or a use out there that doesn't fit in the boxes for that category, they're still protected. So if I have a business that is, if I sell potatoes somewhere and in the future we say, you can only sell bananas there, I can still keep selling my potatoes in that location even when the new code goes in place. I'm not put out of business. I don't have to change. If I decide to close my business or change my business, or sometimes change my structure, that's when I would have to come into compliance with the regulations. But that's going to be the property owner's choice, whether or not they want to make those changes that will trigger their compliance with the regulations. Having said that, we also, when we get to the last piece, the procedures piece, we want to make sure that we've got wiggle room in that non-conforming section, so it's not hardcore. So instead, it's kind of like, some things may be non-conforming, but, you can change uses in a non-conforming structure, or you can add on, what we're saying is we really don't want another one of those built here, but if yours is here and it's structurally sound and safe, carry on. And that's something we can flag to talk with you, all of you, about when we get to that third piece of the drafting and say, here's where we've gone with nonconformities to make sure that county residents and property owners can keep doing what they're doing for the most part. Does that answer your question?
It does, and it prompts a follow-up only because
Yeah.
having dealt with some of these different situations out in my district, so does that contemplate as well that if generationally I was to pass that business, that property onto an heir, or conversely sell it? Because I can see if our stand is same owner, same activity, we will work with you. If something substantial changes, then you need to be in compliance. Well, change of ownership is a substantial change, but it could, if we don't contemplate, if it's not detrimental to the area and we don't contemplate it, then it becomes an impediment to a generational shift or to sell it.
So I think in answer to your question, as we get to the drafting part of that, that's a conversation we're going to want to have and get the board's guidance about. Because we can certainly say substantial change does not include a change in ownership. We can say we only care about the structure or the use or the parking lot. We don't care who owns it, doesn't matter to us. So that's a choice the county can make, and a policy you can decide how you want to follow.
And as long as it's kind of built in as an expectation, as maybe something a zoning or planning commission can also weigh in on as a stipulation. Then my second question is on slide number 11. One of the things that I have gotten feedback from residents on is a concern about the growth of lot size, right? So I just want to make one clarity. This is if someone wants to put a home in an area that has not been really developed for other homes. You're going to, further in the presentation, you're going to present on if there's an area of unincorporated that is becoming more of a residential area with more than one home. So this particular example is if it's just one home out on a plot of land, what the minimum lot size is. It's going to be different if it's if it's multiple homes, right?
Commissioner J. Leipzig, yes, that is correct. This is what you're looking at, the district layouts. So this is the basic zoning districts.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Mr. Leipzig, why don't we go ahead and get to the next part of the presentation?
Okay. Okay, thank you. Back to, I believe the correct slide. We briefly touched on short-term rentals just a moment ago. This is, as you all are aware, this is kind of a trending topic, and it's something that most cities are dealing with or having to deal with. When our regulations were originally adopted in 2004, or excuse me, prior to that, short-term rentals were not even contemplated. So we need to have provisions for short-term rentals, and our zoning regulations do not address those at all, our STRs. But we did do some initial research on short-term rentals and listings on Airbnb and VRBO. There are approximately 13 short-term rentals in the unincorporated area of Johnson County. Now, each city would have their own regulations, but we believe there's at least 13 that are registered on those two websites in the unincorporated area. Allowing short-term rentals offers additional tourism choices and economic benefits for property owners. However, there may be some concerns regarding short-term rentals and potential negative impacts to neighbors. We've all kind of experienced that with planning issues, and land use issues always seem to get people's attention with things. So we need to make sure that we're very deliberate in our approach in dealing with short-term rentals. So what staff is proposing, including provisions for short-term rentals in our new regulations, I think as a best practice, it just makes sense to do so. And it's something that we, there's a lot of examples we can choose from and look at throughout the country. And Clarion also is an expert at developing these regulations as well. So we propose standards for short-term rentals, including registration and a permit that would be required. We have maximum occupancy standards of 2 people per bedroom, plus 2 additional guests, which is what Commissioner Allenbrand had just mentioned. No single bedrooms rented separately from the rest of the dwelling. Designated local responsible party will be available 24/7 to respond to issues or complaints. That way we have somebody we know that would be able to respond to any complaints about or issues. No parties on the property, having quiet hours from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., and no parking on lawns. So these are standard provisions that you would see. There's also provisions in the building code in terms of the number of people per bedroom as well. We did a review of some other jurisdictions. Staff compared short-term rentals with other cities and counties in the Kansas City area, and proposed standards for short-term rentals are generally consistent with other jurisdictions. This is something that is a medium that is, there's a lot of examples out there to look at around the country, and there's national standards that we could look at to help guide some of these decisions. So staff is recommending that we include definitions and standards for short-term rentals and zoning regulations, and the options for short-term rentals is we will either have it presented for separate review and adoption in early 2026, or just have it included as part of our zoning regulations that would be brought before you for possible adoption in June of 2026. And my reason for asking that question is because of the World Cup that is forthcoming, and to get ahead of that game, we would like some direction on how soon we could do that. I should kind of ask Zoe if I missed anything else you think we should talk about or mention, but Zoe's kind of our expert on short-term rentals, so I appreciate her guidance in putting together these materials as well.
Well, I think it'd be great to have this separately, not for just those who may want to rent those properties, but to have these safeguards in place for those around them. If we wait until mid-2026, we're still operating as the Wild West, no pun intended, without regulations. And to be fair to those who do want to have short-term rentals, having this process go forward in early 2026 allows them to get registered and permitted appropriately, and then we can take on the World Cup knowing that these regulations are there to protect not only our guests, but neighboring properties. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Chair, and I apologize for getting ahead of the game. That's what I get for reading ahead. I agree with everything that Chair said, because I have had a lot of people in my district that want to do rentals for the World Cup, but also just doing some short-term rentals for bed and breakfast, type, having people come in and do rentals. So I would ask my fellow commissioners that we do speed this ahead so that we can get that done. And I think that you've covered everything in the short-term rentals except the trash that, I think that's something that I've heard when I've gone to other states, because people will tend to put it out every day. And I've noticed in all the agreements that it's actually listed on there, no trash until it's time to put it out. So, but I really feel like you've done a great job. Thank you, Zoe. She's always very detailed. Not that all your staff isn't, but thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. Registration and permit required, is there a cost to that? There'll be a fee?
Commissioner Hansick,
Good
we
question.
We have not made a final determination on that, but yes, usually there is some type of a fee. That is one of the items we'll do some additional research on and bring it back to you. The fee ranges from Zoe, 150 to about 300, about $150 to $300. So there is a range there.
Okay. And then two other questions. Would this apply if someone had a separate building that they used just for this purpose? Would it apply to people who might want to have an actual B&B, like a whole building? Would that be, this would be different than that kind of situation? And then third, help me understand why no single bedrooms rented separately from the rest of the dwelling. 'Cause some houses have a separate entrance and a separate little area for that kind of purpose.
Commissioner, I'll try to answer the third question. That really is just to prevent people renting out bedrooms in a house, and where you have, you could have a 5-bedroom home and have a different bedroom rented out. This
okay.
is more of a way to protect some of that. We can all, and which you see often in college communities, for example. But there's ways to regulate that through the building code as well in terms of the occupancy. The B&B concept generally applies there. The owner or the provider is usually on site, and that is different. This is strictly a rental property where an owner is not available or not on site. If that answers your question.
The other question I had was about this, if they had a separate building, like they have their home and then they have like an ADU that they are using for rental, a short-term rental.
It would. We do have ADU standards as well, and I'm looking at Michelle if I'm misspeaking at all. But,
Go ahead.
yeah, that could be, that's a possibility as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, excuse me, I'm used to turning the thing on and off. Mr. Leipzig, so there are approximately 13 now in the unincorporated area. So have those 13 been problematic in some way?
Commissioner, we did have one property that was problematic, but it wasn't the 13 that are included here. This is before. It was a situation that was resolved, but the 13 that we have now have not been problematic.
Okay, well, I need to learn more about this. I agree with the chair keeping this as a separate discussion point, because my first reaction is that it seems like a small population, and some of these regulatory suggestions seem to be, my first blush is they seem to be an overreaction to something, and I'm trying to understand what problem we're trying to address. So I need to learn more, and I'm sure you'll educate me.
Commissioner Brewer.
Yes, I have a few questions regarding the short-term rental. First of all, I appreciate that what I'm seeing is you have scanned other communities surrounding us and try to have alignment with what we're seeing are some standard expectations if short-term rentals are in place. So that consistency is important, and as somebody who's used short-term rentals, these rules or regulations are not uncommon that you see when you choose to do a short-term rental. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a couple questions though surrounding this. So when we talk about a registration and a permit, that's a one-time registration and permit with a cost?
Commissioner
Or
Brewer,
that you might have to annually renew?
Commissioner
it's a
Brewer,
once a
that's
year.
something we will need further discussion about. I think and there again, that varies as well, whether it's a one-time permit, once an annual basis, or if it's something that's renewed every year. So additional information will be forthcoming on that too.
Okay, the reason I wanted to kind of get a little clarity on that, because the other question I have that I didn't see in here, and that we are seeing more jurisdictions do, is to apply a hospitality tax to a short-term rental, similar to what hotels and motels do, to create parity, right, in that market of guest rentals, right? And so, and we're not, this is in the unincorporated area, so this, I'm assuming as we explore, be it a registration fee, be it permit, be it any fees, be it a hospitality tax, those would be items that the county would collect for property within the county solely that's not within a city boundary.
Commissioner Brewer, I'm not qualified to answer that question. I don't know definitively, although I would agree with your assessment. This is, many cities are doing that with a bed tax or some type of other additional tax. I don't know if Peg wants to weigh in on that, but that's something that's outside of my
I'm just wondering if while we're exploring these different things, if that's an element we should be exploring. I do have a question about bullet number 2, the no single bedroom rented separately from the rest of the dwelling, because I had 2 different interpretations. One was if somebody was doing a short-term rental of the full house, that they as the guest could not then sub-rent a single bedroom. But you're telling me that's not the interpretation. The interpretation is if I'm an owner of a 5-bedroom house, I cannot be renting one of my single bedrooms? I mean, what does that mean? What does number 2 mean? Because I'm still seeking clarity for the interpretation of that.
I'm going to see if I can have Zoe come up and provide some clarification for you.
Awesome, thank you.
So you were wondering about if someone could sub-rent it from that?
What that means, if you can tell me what no single bedroom rented separately from the rest of the house, what do you mean by that? What's the intent?
So, yeah, like we said earlier, it's about having the entire house rented to one party, one group of people. If it was rented, like one room is with one party, one room is with another, then that would be closer to what a bed and breakfast would look like in our regulations. But we want it to be one party renting the whole house.
I would encourage you to work on that bullet because in short-term rental, somebody can choose to rent the full house or a room in the house, and so I would look at what you're trying to get to. I would look at some clarity because that rent a room in the house could have 2 interpretations.
Sure, yeah.
I could be the owner of the house and I could choose one room maybe I'm going to use as a short-term rental, but the rest I'm going to be in the house. I'm going to be the owner occupying the house while there's a guest in the house, or it could be the interpretation you have given it where somebody's renting multiple rooms to multiple parties at the same time.
Right.
So I would seek some clarity. And then just as a third, there's a more and more popular opportunity. So this will impact our rural area because we have a number of specialty agritourism, winery, specialty farms. It's called Harvest Host. And Harvest Host, if you're not familiar, it looks like maybe you're familiar with Harvest Host. If I am a camper RV and I would like to be able to park one night in on property that's a vineyard, on property that's a llama farm, on property that's a specialty farm. Typically, these are primitive sites. Typically, you can only stay 1 or 2 nights, but and it's another income stream for somebody who has a large land lot, and it's a unique experience for the visitor who's coming through town. And typically, they know it's a primitive, so they have to. It's not. You can't hook up to water or electricity. I just want to make sure that as we are contemplating all of this, we don't eliminate that possibility because I can see that possibility being popular in our area, especially since our unincorporated area is close to metro areas where somebody might want to just come in for a few nights, and that's a good solution in that type of vehicle to be able to enjoy the city and still have a place to stay.
All right, moving on to the next part of the presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next section that we wanted to talk a little bit about are long-duration energy storage facilities. And keep in mind that the difficulty with these regulations is not what exists currently, and what has existed in the past. We talked a little bit about, non-conforming uses, but what we try to capture is uses in the future as well. The shelf life of this document is approximately 25 years. And so we have to anticipate or think about technologies that are used now, but as well as well into the future of even technologies that we're not aware of currently. So that's the difficult part of these regulations in general, and making sure that we try to capture those. I also wanted to note that we do have someone on Zoom as well. We have Kate Jones with the Berkeley Group is available to answer any detailed questions we might have in regard to the long duration energy storage. Also in your packet was a fact sheet that talks about battery energy storage that provides some key statistics for that. And essentially, though, I thought I would define this. Long-term energy storage are facilities that capable of storing electricity for 10 plus hours to support the grid. Types of long-duration energy storage include mechanical, underground pumped hydro, gravitational, compressed air, flywheel, also thermal sensible heat, latent heat, and thermochemical, chemical hydrogen, and then, of course, electrochemical battery. I'm not an engineer, and I cannot even begin to describe the technical aspects of some of these things, but this is a subject area that I personally, because of Johnson County's proximity, we're an urban county or rapidly developing county. You can see why, that it just makes sense that energy storage would be something that would be attractive. And what would be kind of thought of as we move into the future. So our current regulations for long-term energy storage is the zoning regulations currently permit battery energy storage only as an accessory use for utility scale solar. You might recall we had some significant discussions about that in terms of compliance with the fire code, and it was a use that had to be accompanied by a solar utility scale solar facility. So staff consulted with the Berkeley Group to review best practices, and then they did develop a white paper for us that pertains to battery energy storage and what the most common types of what these long-term, long-duration facilities would look like. Nationally, there's a trend to separate those uses. When we did the solar regulations a few years ago, it really was, at that point, that was considered best practice to include them together. Now there is a trend to separate off battery energy storage as a separate use. So essentially, that is the direction that we wish to get from the board is to look at including long duration energy storage as a standalone use by itself. And I'm getting ahead of myself in my slides. So we'll talk based on the findings of the white paper. The regulatory options can be expanded to a broader group of long duration energy storage facilities. In other words, things that could be used in the future as well. And so the options would be to maintain the current accessory-only framework for battery energy storage, or allow long-duration energy sources as an accessory use, or to permit it as a standalone use through different tiers. And this is something that would require additional work. It would be something additional we're getting back to you, but I would anticipate some type of a tiered approach based on the size and the type of use, and looking at a variety of things that we could use to regulate it, such as setbacks and screening and visibility and those type of things. So best practice recommendations, staff recommends amending the regulations to define the use as a distinct land use and establish capacity tiers. Include standards for small storage facilities and conditional permitting for medium and large facilities. Also requirements for migrating visual impacts through setbacks, landscaping, screening, fencing and lighting standards, and treatment of power lines. Require energy storage applications to meet the National Fire Protection Association standards, Section 855, is currently required in our county regulations. You might recall there was a lot of discussion about that when the utility scale solar regulations were before you. And this would also include working with the local fire districts and ensuring that those standards, those codes are up to date. We had a discussion earlier this morning about the new international codes that will be forthcoming for review. That would also include those standards for fire protection as well. And the 2024 code is pretty expansive in terms of its application and its parameters for long duration energy storage. And so there are provisions for that in the new code that would be that could accommodate that. So with that, I'll pause for questions on that piece of it.
Well, Mr. Leipzig, thank you, and I'm glad we're having this important discussion as we think about opportunities in Johnson County and needs in Johnson County. Energy clearly rises to the top of the list. That's why I'm glad that the Civic Council has prioritized energy. We look at the regional playbook for economic development, that energy is a priority area. We think about grid stabilization as well as the opportunities that Kansas has to be an energy exporter. Storage is a key component to that ecosystem, and so I'm very glad we're addressing it. I concur with the regulations or the recommendations for said regulations. I had a question, it may be a little more technical in terms of the type of storage. We're talking about battery storage here. Does that definition of battery include multiple modes of batteries, say lithium ion being one, solar salt being another, and there's probably more that I am not technically savvy enough to know. So how do we define battery, and do we provide, is that part of the tier structure, or help me define a better question about the mode of storage?
Chairman, I appreciate the question, and also being not technically aware of some of the details of this technology. However, I would say that yes, we would want to be very deliberate in how we define it and using different tiers and how that's defined through those tiers. Yes, I think that's where we would want to make sure that we include multi-modes and multiple types of uses, as well as those we anticipate for the future as well, in terms of what that would look like at a tier. And this is something, essentially, if the board provides direction today to separate out as a standalone use, we would do additional research with this. Clarion is also an expert in these type of applications, as well as the Berkeley Group. There's also several local engineering firms in Kansas City that can look at these items as well, and coming up with regulations, as I said, in my opinion, probably based on a tiered approach, and then coming back to the Planning Commission for further review, and then back to you for further study too.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. Just a quick question, and you alluded to this a bit. So would these recommendations come back to the board along with the new zoning regulations, or would it be separate? And what do you anticipate would be the time frame if it is separate?
Thank you, Commissioner, for that question. I would anticipate for these would come back as part of the regulations for the subdivision, with the subdivision regulations. So approximately on next summer in 2026.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me.
You got it.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Chairman, you said this maybe differently than I'm going to say it. I mean, batteries are tricky things. So let me ask, is there any discussion going on at the state level to establish statewide standards, or should there be, given the development of new technologies and the possibility that this could be not like a solar farm, a one-off. It could be widespread and heavily developed. And I'm postulating there. I'm just wondering, is there a statewide umbrella looking at this? And I mean, do you know, Mr. Chairman?
Well,
I'm going to try to put you on the spot.
no.
I'm just curious.
And My short answer is no, I'm not sure exactly where this stands at the state level. My preference is going to be that we address it locally.
And I'm not disagreeing.
But I just don't always agree with the one-size-fits-all approach from the state of Kansas.
No, fair enough. Well, I will tell you, and you, Mr. Leipzig, you touch upon this, but these battery storage facilities do engender a certain level of energy by the population. And one issue that I see reoccurring is related to fire safety and how that's managed, both suppression as well as prevention. And my question, particularly for Johnson County, is so who bears the cost of any specialized equipment and development? I mean, are the county's fire departments going to have to have whole new contingencies for this, and then who pays for it? Will it be the specialized consumer, or will all taxpayers within that jurisdiction be paying for it? So I will be interested in learning more. Thank you.
Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. So 2 questions. One, slide 23 to me intimates the contemplation of long-term duration energy storage that is more than just battery storage. That we're contemplating that in the energy sector, as there's different forms of short and long-term energy storage, we want to have planning or zoning regulations that contemplates that and gives some framework for it and doesn't treat it strictly as an accessory use or as a typical industrial or type zoning. So 23 to me, slide 23 kind of intimated that we were thinking beyond just battery storage. Is that correct?
That is correct, Commissioner.
Okay.
I think it goes back to the comment I made about, we have current technology, it's available today, but then we need to think about technology that might be, that we can't even frankly contemplate now, but might be a real issue, kind of emerging 15 years from now.
And that is already happening. There is other forms that are being developed that are outside of battery storage. So I really support the tiered approach. So I appreciated that recommendation. And on slide 26, bullet 3, the only thing, and I'm trying to be cognizant of our, for the sake of what we're doing here, our areas impacted are unincorporated areas, because that's where we do have ability to impose zoning and planning restrictions. So we talk about requirements for mitigating visual impact, and the one thing I don't see on this is height. Why is it on, and should that be a consideration?
Thank you, Commissioner. Great question. It should be. Yes, it is something we would certainly consider. You might recall on our utility scale regulations, we had height requirements and height restrictions as well. So, yeah, that would certainly all be part of that criteria that we would look at. As I said, this is something that will require quite a bit of review and research and make sure we get it right. And we do have experts in this room, as well as other engineering firms that do this type of work worldwide to give us those best practices as well.
Well, that was going to be my last suggestion for you. Is I think in Johnson County and in the Kansas City region, we're uniquely blessed with a lot of power engineer expertise that are known not only locally, not only nationally, but internationally. It may be worth our time to maybe pull some of those together, not as consultants, but maybe as simply, an input group to set a meeting with them. And I'd be happy to also suggest some folks who might have this expertise, just to make you, so you're thinking long-term around this issue. Thank you.
To Commissioner Brewer's point, I will note that there are several of those professionals on our sustainability committee, including our electric utility, Evergy. So that might be a good resource for us here. Commissioner Allen Brand?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I agree with the chairman. I have one thing I've always liked at our planning and zoning department that you lead, Jay, is you and your team are always being leaders. And I don't think we can stamp market by looking at the state and saying you designed this. But the other thing I've liked, and being on here long enough, that you also reach out to get opinions, and so you don't just stamp them. You're working with, we've got some good leaders in the room here. Like the chair said, there's some really good people that can help do this. And I really feel that, I mean, if it's gonna happen, it's mostly gonna be in my district, because that's where most of the solar farms, that's what we're looking at. I mean, if you look at it, that's where it's gonna be at. And I appreciate, because I know that you will also, because fire protection is very important. And that's one of the things with the Panasonic plant that we did, along with working with our fire departments and with Panasonic, that most of that would be sustained within the building. So I'm sure that your team's looking at that along with the experts that you meet with. But I know you guys literally spend hours and hours meeting with other professionals and like with our consultants. So thank you for that.
Commissioner Hensley.
Thank you. I appreciate the conversation around the responsibility for fire suppression and the concerns about fire. But I would venture to say in the United States, we have a much greater issue with coal mine fires than we do with battery fires. But perhaps we can learn something from the coal mining industry in terms of what are their policies and what have they done in terms of responsibility for coal mine fires. And part of why I say that is I grew up in Pennsylvania, and some of you may remember there's a town called Centralia, Pennsylvania, that had to be abandoned because the coal seams underneath caught fire and nobody could put them out. So I guess I kind of say that because I know there's a lot of concern around electric battery fires, but we have to compare that to in my opinion, and what I think history shows, much greater dangers from coal mining. And so I think this is electric battery storage is very doable compared to the dangers of coal mining.
Thank you. Let's continue at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under our last topic for the day does it directly pertain to our zoning regulations update, but it is kind of an aside to it, and it's overall it would be affected by that. So I wanted to also talk about the possibility of zoning board consolidation. As you're aware, there's a history of consolidation in the county. Created zoning boards from 1984. And we've had 8 consolidations from 1984 to 2023. Our most recent consolidation was the Northwest and Southwest Zoning Board consolidated to become the West Consolidated Zoning Board. And then also the Southeast Zoning Board did not change the boundaries, but they changed the name to the East Consolidated Zoning Board. So we've had a history of doing this. In the last consolidation was in 2023. I wanted to point out the statutory membership for the zoning boards according to the KSA 19-2975. Statutory membership is 5 members, but not more than 9. Consolidation requires publishing a notice twice, at least 10 days before the public hearing, according with Kansas, the statutes 19.2975. Currently, in each of our zoning boards, we have 7 members in our east and our west. Talk a little bit about the land use in the unincorporated area. We have total county land area is about 305,000 acres, almost 306,000 acres. Total county population, according to 2025, is 637,574. And you can see just from 2020 through 2025, the number of acres has been reduced in the unincorporated area by about 15,000 acres. And part of that, though, the caveat, I believe it was 2021, was the annexation by the city of Eudora, or excuse me, city of DeSoto for the Sunflower Army Ammunition site. So that's a big part of it. But you could see with the population reduction of about 15,000 people, or 50,000 acres, and then our parcels have increased by that period of time. So it's becoming, as we become more suburbanized, those parcels, those numbers increase. And then our population has gone up slightly by 8 people. So it's not been significant. So the county now, the unincorporated area of the county is about 35%. Just as an example, in 2017, I believe the unincorporated area of the county was at 43% at that time. So it has gone down a little bit since that period of time. And then this next chart shows you graphically the zoning board boundaries. You can see the west zoning board area is larger than the east, but there are less people in the west. There's about 9,141 people in the east and about 6,040 people in the west consolidated zoning board. And then you can see the number of acres in that slide as well. You've got about almost 70,000 acres in the west zoning board, and about 37,527 in the east area. Looking at the number of applications considered by the zoning boards. So this just looking at from 2023 through 2025, because of that, the most recent consolidation, we didn't have with the new West Zoning Board and the renamed East Zoning Board, we didn't have applications that year in 2023 until August. So that's why those numbers, kind of an outlier, are significantly lower. But if you look at 2024, we had 17 in the East, 24 in the West. In 2025, we're roughly close to that same schedule between January and October, being 15 in the East and 17 in the West. So that gives you an idea and those numbers are roughly consistent and will appear to be consistent in the future. So factors for consolidation. So the jurisdiction and the land area continues to shrink for the unincorporated Johnson County. The number of applications in the East Zoning Board and the West Zoning Board are right now considered, they're generally equal, but we do anticipate a reduction in the number of applications for each zoning board after we go through the approval process for the zoning regulations. Part of and we just touched on this with our use tables and created the flexibility in the streamlined process for those regulations is we anticipate we'll have fewer applications. And so, which is, easier for staff to interpret and review, and also easier for developers to understand, and will expedite that process and make the development process smoother and faster. So we think we will have less applications. We also expect a decline or shrinking pool of potential board members able to serve on zoning boards as well as we move into the future. So what I just touched on this a second ago, the current nominations, the zoning board, East Consolidated Zoning Board has 7 members. There's 4 members from the 3rd District Commissioner, and 3 members are nominated by the chair. The West Consolidated Zoning Board is also 7 members. 4 members are proposed by the 6th District Commissioner, and then the chair appoints 3, or nominates 3. What staff would propose is we look at a 9-member zoning board. So the 3rd District Commissioner would have 3 appointees, or 3 members. The 6th District Commissioner would have 3, and the chair would have 3. So 9. We currently have 12 people on the Planning Commission, And so that would be, that process would remain virtually the same. It would still be the same number of people from the zoning boards to be part of that planning commission. But I think that the 9 members on the zoning board makes sense. And so just in summary, staff recommends the consolidation of the East and West zoning boards to one consolidated zoning board. The question is the option of when to consolidate. If it would make sense to consolidate in early 2026, which we could do that. We believe we have the resources and we've done most of this research before, and we have those most of the documents, the bylaws. We have kind of templates we could use for most of those things, or to make that recommendation consistent with the approval process for the new zoning regulations. So in other words, in possibly of June of next year. So the question is whether to do it right away in January, or wait and then do it possibly next summer when the regulations go through that approval process. So if the board gives us that direction, we can begin that process with the zoning boards and letting them know and prepare a resolution. If you choose to do it immediately, we would have a resolution before you in January. But I think it's something that as we move into the future and think about the future, it's something that just as we look at the number of applications and as the county continues to change and to shrink, I think it from a logistical standpoint, it makes sense. It's just a matter of when that would be appropriate. And that concludes my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Leipzig, thank you very much. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Chair. Well, you know, I have been a big supporter of this and think that this is something that we need to do. I think one of the things that, you know, just hearing, because I have the most land, maybe not the most population, but the most land where a lot of development's going on, that I wish some of the people that get pulled into into cities, that they had the ability to maybe plan their own land and stay in the unincorporated area. But I think maybe with some of the regulations that you have in place, that could be a possibility for them to do that. So I see that as a plus. I think that the cost that's related, I mean, this is one of the things even before I got elected that I heard about. I mean, we've come a long ways, and I appreciate Chair Kelly working with our zoning board, being able to, our planning commission, our briefs, you know, moving things forward, because we have an educated, trained staff with speculations. You know, we used to like make them go back through the whole process if they weren't FAA approved. So if you look at the process that somebody has to go through, it's costly. So no matter how you look at it, it's costly for staff, it's costly for having all the meetings, it's costly to the development team. I could argue that because I have more land in my district that I would need to have more appointments, but I'm not. I'm willing to share those 3 and 3 and 3. I feel like it's better sooner than later. I would really like to get this done. I think that long term, I think we really need to look at, if you look at the map and you look at the areas that touch, I feel like that every commissioner, as far as the planning commission, having an appointment in the near future. So I feel like this is the right direction to move forward in doing that. So that's my comments.
Commissioner Brewer.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Leipzig, I think it's also fair to point out, as we discuss this particular part of today's agenda, is I appreciate the opportunity that both Commissioner Allenbrand and I have had to meet with the planning staff and to look at the data. Candidly, when I think about, it's different when we had 8 different zoning boards, now we're down to 2, knowing that staff, regardless if there's one or two zoning boards, the number of applications that come through that's being done by the same staff, really the cost duplication at this point is around staffing two separate meetings on two separate times of the day, times of the day or the week throughout the year. So that's not the tip of the sword for me. That has this make more sense. Really, for me, the tip of the sword has been, we are seeing a decrease in total acres of land in the unincorporated area. Although parcels have grown over time, population has really been maintained. And when we look at the number of applications that both zoning boards have seen, it's pretty similar, but it's not overwhelming. We see throughout the year that we either have to cancel a meeting due to lack of application or lack of quorum. So for me, consolidation would hopefully create a more steady consistency of we have something to meet about and we have enough people to do the meeting. The other thing I've appreciated is the analysis of the stipulations that both zoning boards may impose on a development, because at the end of the day, they're both constricted to the same planning and zoning template. So it's not like they're doing vastly different decision-making because they're playing in the same rule book. And when they do unique stipulations, there's been a consistency and a through line to that. For me, what I'd like to see is we've started the conversation in a public setting today. My understanding is the next steps, we continue that with both of the zoning boards and the planning commission, as opposed to today stipulating, are we going to do this in January? Are we going to do this in June? I would like to maybe offer a third option, and that is subsequent to meetings that you'll be holding with both of those zoning boards and the planning commission, if maybe we could have an opportunity to hear back what that feedback was. And, if the feedback is, this is a great idea, let's move forward, then let's move that up on the time schedule outside of the cycle of the rest of the rural comprehensive plan and zoning update being done. If there are some valid concerns that are brought up that we need to discuss further as a body, I'd like to have the space to do that. So that would be my recommendation, is I'm not opposed to going quicker, but I'd like to have an informed opportunity to make that decision, and I won't have that until I hear how those meetings went.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Brewer, I appreciate your last comment because I was wondering if we had any stakeholder reaction to this. So I concur with Commissioner Brewer's posturing on this. I would say if it is presented as a fait accompli, then there would be some questions about our process strategy, and I think Commissioner Brewer is sensitive to that. Clarification of the proposed, the potential proposed board of 9, what is the residency requirement then?
Commissioner Ashcraft, these would all be in the unincorporated area.
Well, do they have to live in districts 3 and 6?
Yeah, it would be in 3 and 6, yes. And then the chairman could appoint people from either of those districts in the unincorporated area.
And how about District 5?
105 as well.
So District 5 individuals could be considered?
Yeah, that's right. You have a small area that is in the.
I mean, yeah, there aren't many people, but there's probably 100 households. But it's just what was the term? Taxation without representation or something like that. I just want to make sure that they aren't being systematically excluded.
Yep.
If that is incorporated in this action going forward, then I will not raise the issue of having a representative on the board.
Well, I think it would be fair if the chair had the opportunity to appoint folks from any place in the unincorporated area.
Regardless of the district.
Regardless of the district.
Yeah.
Commissioner Allenbrand?
Thank you, Chair. And I do want to say that this isn't new. We've been working on this for some time, so I know that my zoning board knows this is coming, and we have presented this, and we've talked about this. And I know Commissioner Brewer is new to the commission, and this may be the last, 6 months, something that she's hearing, but it is, and I hear Commissioner Ashcraft talk about his district as well. It is frustrating. It's frustrating for me when I have people that are in my district and the East Zoning Board is making the decision for that district. So I hope we move. I hope we move forward. We don't just keep delaying this. So that's just my comment.
Commissioner Brewer?
Just to get into the fine detail weeds for just a moment, slide 30. I would just recommend right now, the district overlay is not the current redistrict map that was approved in July. And I only state that so that I'm optimistic that this consolidation will end up moving forward subsequent to the process that we have just discussed. And so when we think about appointments, especially for the chair, who has a more broader scope of appointments to it, let's make sure we're using the most recent redistricting map, just because I'm not sure if then it captures more. I'm not sure how District 5 or 6 boundaries change. I kind of only memorized how my boundaries changed, but that's just an aside. Just let's make sure we use the current map.
All right. I'll move toward direction.
Mr. Chairman, just to wrap up, and I will repeat what I think I have heard from the board. If I'm incorrect in terms of this direction, the short-term rentals, we will bring that, begin to develop those regulations and bring that forward to you in the near future. In other words, prior to the adoption or the review and potential adoption of the zoning regulations next year. We would probably do that sometime in if we can, bring them forward in January or February of next year and begin that process. That's one item I heard. The long-term or long-duration energy storage facilities is taking that out as an accessory use for utility scale solar and making that a standalone use. That would require some significant review and edits to make sure we create the regulations in an appropriate way and through some kind of a tiered process and bring that before further review by the Planning Commission and then for this body at a later date too. That probably will be, I assume probably the spring of next year we would have a discussion about that, but then have that be part of our overall regulations for the adoption during that review in the summer of next year. And then the last item, the zoning board consolidation. If you feel it's appropriate to move forward with the consolidation, we could do that. Staff in terms of direction from the board, we could get some initial feedback from the zoning boards. We could present this item to them or this topic for discussion at their meeting in December, and then bring back something to you in January. If you would choose to do that, or if you would rather wait and do it at a later date. So I think I summarized everything.
So moved, as articulated by Mr. Leipzig.
Second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Allen Brand. Discussion at this time. Commissioner Ashcraft.
There are some nuances in the conversation that I'm going to trust that you'll get into.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right. Seeing no further, Commissioner Allen Brand.
Thank you, Chair. And I told Commissioner Ashcraft, since some of his there's a small area of West Olathe that if he had somebody to appoint, I would give up one of mine for that, unless Commissioner Brewer wants to do it, but I'm more than happy to do that.
And I'm not lobbying for that.
I understand.
You understand what I'm asking?
Okay. Without further discussion, would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast. Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allen Brand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
7 in favor, none against. Is that consistent with your count? Thank you also very much for the presentation today. Thank you for your patience with us as we try to digest a lot of information, and we look forward to good work ahead on these important topics. So thank you all so very much. This committee of the whole is adjourned. If we'd all take 5 minutes to allow the clerk to change the technology, we'll continue with our next committee of the whole. Thank you. We're adjourned. I'm going to project.
Hello? Mine works.
Approximately 3 o'clock on November 20th, 2025. My name is Mike Kelly, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners for Johnson County, Kansas. Here for a committee of the whole regarding the Sparks Innovation Study. I'll note for the record that all commissioners are present. In front of us today are Adam Norris from the County Manager's Office, Carrie O'Brien from the Communications Department, and Sherry Klosterman from the Human Resources Department. We're going to hear a presentation, have an opportunity for discussion and deliberation. So without further ado, Mr. Norris.
Hey there, good afternoon. Yeah, I will introduce, or let the team introduce themselves real quick, and then we'll get rolling. Go ahead. Carrie.
Carrie O'Brien, Department of Communications and Engagement.
Sherry Klosterman, Human Resources.
All right. So just to frame this up, this is really a follow-up conversation from the board retreat that was held in January, or February, I'm sorry. So this is kind of one of the action items that was set aside that we're following up on from that. Real quick, this is what we're going to go through today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Sparks program, then just go through what a typical board meeting looks like, evaluate a current state overview, and then internal case studies, and then some peer organization data that we were able to pull, and then really just kind of have a considerations and discussions section. Going into this, we had really 3 goals. Thinking about it was one, how do we increase productivity without adding resources? So how do we drive efficiency in the organization? The second is, can we maintain or increase transparency? And then the third is, how do we increase opportunities for policy discussions such as study sessions or committee of the wholes like we're having right now? So the Sparks program really is, our HPO culture. We talk about that a little bit, and you hear about that every now and then. But this is really that HPO culture in action, right? This focuses on, how do we compare with other organizations, and focusing on continuous improvement and leadership at all levels. So Sparks is a unique opportunity for employees to collaborate with the county's innovation team. They're in the budget office, and then contribute to transformative projects, expand their professional network, and the goals of the Sparks program are to empower innovation, promote learning, encourage collaboration, and build relationships across the Johnson County organization. So here's a picture of the team members that assisted with this. Not everybody was able to present today. Somebody not listed there, but because she didn't want to be recognized, but should be recognized, is Grace Hanna in the back with the innovation team. She kept us on track. She guided this and helped us put some tools together to really evaluate this. So I want to make sure Grace is recognized on this. So going into current state analysis, I want to point out I handed you all an updated slide here earlier today because there was a typo that I made on this slide and then another slide further into the presentation. But so we looked at January of this year to September of this year, so about a 9-month snapshot. And during that course of time, there were 34 business meetings that averaged about 2.2 hours per meeting, and that equated to, 34 business meetings, 284 items reviewed, and then that took about 15 minutes per item. Okay, then we also looked at agenda review meetings during that time period. 180 items were reviewed. It was about 1.25 hours per meeting on average, and it was about 8 minutes per item. So real quick, you all are familiar with how the structure of our board meeting, but so there's call to order, and then the Pledge of Allegiance, public comments. There's oftentimes recognitions, proclamations that are had. Then there are notes for the record, and then the business session includes consent agenda, which is our routine items, sometimes contracts, sometimes land use items, other items that are routine in nature or have been discussed and the group feels can be on consent. Then there's the action agenda items that are separate matters that are discussed individually. And then once the business session concludes, there's reports and recommendations from the county manager, commissioner comments. Sometimes there's an executive session, and then adjourning the meeting. So just real quick run through of how that works. So we looked, this is kind of the internal case study that we did. We took an average agenda item, a typical agenda item in facilities, and kind of walked it through the process and mapped it out. It took about 40 hours of staff time, and which we put a dollar value with that is just under $3,000 to do that. So it's 8 staff, it crosses 4 departments, and there's 21 steps involved with, from conception to getting it on the agenda and voted on, 21 steps. We also kind of looked at our office, which seems to be doing a fair amount of the heavy lifting when it comes to agendas. So we have 17 FTEs in our office. We spend about 120 hours per week in work specifically related to the board meetings. That includes the board meeting days, but it does include everything leading up to the board meeting, preparing for the board meeting, writing the items, everything that goes into that. So there's about 11 of our staff are involved with that, and there's 10 tasks associated with that. That does exclude the clerk and assistant clerk. We didn't include their time in this because that's kind of one of their primary functions.
All right, that's where I joined. So I joined this project as a graphic designer to help the team visually organize how the meeting process works right now. Back on slide 5, we showed you how we got here. Using sticky notes, we sorted through the many standard tasks from the initial upload to the internal on-base system to publishing it to the public, all the way to agenda review and the Thursday BOCC meeting, finally the meeting minutes that come up the next week. Before we go to the full current schedule, I wanted to focus on a single agenda and how that looks across a 4-week calendar. Many people think of the Thursday BOCC meeting, but each agenda actually spans those 4 weeks with all of the various tasks, meaning that BOCC meetings actually overlap. Each week touches 4 different agendas in progress.
So another part of this project includes reaching out to our peer organizations to gather data on how they operated in their board meetings. So this map shows that the cities and the counties that we reached out to, and the ones listed in orange responded, and those are Austin, Texas, Oklahoma City, Olathe, Overland Park, Shawnee, Prince William County, Virginia, Sedgwick County, Wyandotte County, Hennepin County, Minnesota, Henrico County, Virginia, Maricopa County, Arizona, and Mecklenburg County, North Carolina. So out of that information that we collected, here's a high-level summary of that data. Out of the 18 organizations that we contacted, 12 of them responded. Only one other peer organization has a public agenda review meeting, which is Sedgwick County. And the average length of time for the meeting in hours is 2, with the shortest being 20 minutes and the longest being 12 hours. And finally, the average number of agenda items per meeting was 38.
All right, going back and doing a quick snapshot to summarize the different data that we collected on the, and this is again one of the slides that I handed out as a corrected slide. So for us, our average meeting duration is 2.2 hours, with our peers being 2 hours. Then there's the agenda review. Wanted to asterisk this. There's only Sedgwick County is the one that does agenda review. We did a 6-month look, and that was about 15 minutes on average per agenda review session for them. Then we have about 8 agenda items per meeting, and again, other organizations have 38. And then we spend about 15 minutes per agenda item versus our peers that look to spend about 2 minutes per agenda item. And then we spend about 8 minutes per item in agenda review. We didn't collect this information from Sedgwick County because it required kind of a manual operation there. Looking over on the right-hand side of this chart, we have 8 meetings a month, which we count the board meeting and the agenda review as 2 separate meetings. Our peers, 9 of them have 2 meetings per month. One has 3 meetings a month. One has 4 meetings a month, and then one has 6 meetings a month, which is Sedgwick County. That counts their agenda review as well. So part of what we wanted to look at as a team is, are there other ways to approach meetings or structure meeting cadence? And we came up with 4 different scenarios here. The first would be alternating agenda review and action agenda, alternating weeks. So you'd have agenda review one week and take action on it the following week. We would revise the timelines for public posting and then study sessions and committee of the whole as well. This would free up time. One of the goals, as I mentioned before, was free up time for policy conversations. This would help achieve that. The second option, B, was to have action agenda on alternating weeks and then no agenda review. And then on those off weeks, there would be space to have study sessions and committee of the wholes to have that policy conversation. Option C was no agenda review and weekly board meetings. We would again revise the public posting deadlines and for study sessions and cows and board meetings. And this does free some time for study sessions and cows. The fourth option would be to alternate routine items and business items, and I think this with no agenda review. And this one bears a little bit of explaining here. So we would, on 1 week, we would have more routine items like approval of minutes and appointments, and then then the rest of the day could be spent on study sessions and committee of the wholes. And then on the following week, we would have kind of a typical agenda with more robust items or more involved items. So we just alternate weeks like that. But they would free up time on those off weeks to have those study sessions and cows. Okay. It would free up time to have study sessions and cows. That was the last thing I said. Is there anything I need to repeat? Subsection D. All right, let me explain this one more time. Sorry about that. So what it involves is alternating kind of routine agendas and regular action agendas. And what I mean by that is 1 week we would have like appointments and approval of minutes, and then the rest of the time could be spent on committee of the wholes or study sessions. And then the following week, that following Thursday, we could have, our typical agenda where we take action on land use items or contracts and that type of thing. Okay. So I want to point out something here, though. Options A and B would likely require a charter resolution to create an opportunity for meetings to be held less than weekly. But C and D would not necessarily require that.
Yep. And we're going to go over those options again visually. So with option A, we are doing alternating agenda review and action agenda. This graphic extends the calendar to 5 weeks because the earlier upload of the agenda to the public. And because this is the only option that still includes agenda review. You can see that publishing now consistently occurs on Fridays across all 4 of these options. In this option, 2 or 3 agendas are in progress any given week versus the previous 4. You'll also notice the new open spaces in the schedule as times for study sessions and committees of the whole. Option B, action agenda alternating weeks and no agenda review. This option is very similar to option A, but removes agenda review. Study sessions and cows take place in the alternating weeks between BOCC meetings. Just 2 agendas will overlap during any given week. Option C, no agenda review, weekly BOCC meetings. This schedule removes agenda review but maintains weekly BOCC meetings. This option and option D have 4 overlapping agendas as with the current schedule, but they include new spaces for study sessions and cows. And option D, alternating routine items and business items. Option D is very similar to option C, but with a focus on intentionally alternating the BOCC meeting agendas between routine and business items as described on slide 13, as Adam described.
All right, so now to discussion and some potential direction here. One option here would be to take one of these options and as presented, or even if there's an alternative or a variation of that that you all prefer, and adopt that as a pilot for 6 or 12 months. And I think, the benefit of a pilot is it's temporary, it's flexible, if we get into it and it doesn't work or we need to change it, we can always go back and change it or revert back to a previous version. And also to get feedback along the way, make sure that we're meeting the goals that we had set out and the goals that you all have as policymakers. And then the second thing is we typically adopt the official board meeting calendar, and so that's in one of your attachments, and we could add that to the board meeting on December 4th for adoption. So with that, that's it.
Well, thank you very, very much for going through this process. And Carrie, thanks for helping show it visually. Some of us are more visual learners. And to be able to see that in a different format is very helpful. And thank you for the innovation team and the Sparks team bringing this forward. I think it's crucial for us to recognize as a starting point, the meetings are important, they're public, they give people an opportunity to understand what we're doing, but it's not the end-all be-all of commissioners' work. It's not the end-all be-all of staff's work. So much goes on in the intervening week to make sure that this organization continues to run as efficient and as effectively as possible. And I appreciate that this board has been willing to innovate in a number of ways in which the county operates. And that's a good thing. We value that high-performing organization, and we want to be able to be most additive to the community in the policies that we set, in the issues that we tackle. The resource we have to be able to do that is not only our own time, but the time of the staff. So not only from a cost perspective, as you mentioned, with the cost per item, the amount of time spent per week from the staff, but just the time in and of itself. By choosing how we direct time to be spent, that directly impacts our ability to be as effective as policymakers as possible. So I really appreciate all of these recommendations. Frankly, I think any of them is a innovation that I'd be willing to try, and I look forward to a good discussion. Commissioner Allenbrand?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I want to tell you how much I appreciate this. Is something I know this commission's been asking for. And when I'm in here during the week, if you're in here on a Monday, Tuesday, the fast pace of the staff, and that's only what I'm seeing in the office that I'm at, but just the involvement that the entire staff is involved in. And it's from the time I've came on board now with all the core reports and people running for offices, the amount of staff being stretched is just not even sustainable. One thing I've heard from this commission is they wanting more cows, more study sessions. And with this, that's allowing that. And then just like the chair did today, if there's something that he feels, or the commission, he can pull that off and we can do an agenda review, or we can still review it as future. And I think that this also addresses anything. It's not going to delay anybody in development, or if they're trying to build something, so that's going to keep going forward. I feel like I did reach out to Adam and I wanted a recommendation because I feel like you guys, you're experts, you know how much time we're spending to make it more effective. He recommended number D. And so I do have a motion for that, but I would also like to put, 12 months is probably a good pilot program, but maybe review it in 6 months. And I think it's smart to adopt the calendar as it's written, because that's what we've had for the past few years. But I know change is hard and it's going to be difficult for some of us to make that change, but I think that it's necessary, and I'm full support.
Thank you. Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, on the current state of the analysis, I guess what I don't understand, the time you use in agenda review, you have that done. You don't, why do you have to then repeat all that again for the business? Those are the same items. So the meeting you spend on 5 on agenda review, those are the same items. They should be ready to go then for the business session. I don't understand why that takes, you know what I mean, why you're duplicating so much effort, because that item that goes on agenda review is the same item that goes on the business session.
I may not understand your question when you're
So when
talking
you
about the
get
time.
ready, like when I organize a meeting for my board of directors, I do a pre-meeting, and then that's the pre-meeting, it's the same items. And then you have the regular meeting, but the items haven't changed and the packet hasn't changed. So you're presenting it like these are 2 different meetings, or the same meetings with the same agenda items. So there shouldn't be a lot more time on the board agenda after you get everything ready for the agenda review.
Are you referring to slide number 5?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the public meeting process. That's not, it has nothing to do with the back end work that we do. That's the time spent in agenda review. That's so 1.2 hours, that's per meeting. That's not any back end work that we do. That's just representative of the work here in this room.
But you're also talking about the back end work too.
I don't those numbers aren't accounted
No,
for
but
here. Yeah.
you kind of were alleging to that too, that all the time that it takes for staff to do agenda review, and then all the time it takes for staff to do, doesn't the time you do for agenda review reduce the time that you do for the regular meeting?
Yeah, there's oftentimes less involvement with agenda review, but there is still involvement once it's gone through that process. You know, there's adjustments that have to be made. There's work that has to be done still. Yeah.
Because for me, not having agenda review, being a person who works, it is really hard then to line up staff for 6 meetings. So then there's going to be, like, let's say if there's 6 agenda items, there's 6 staff meetings, 6 staff will have to have 6 meetings with us. So that's 36 hours of meetings that staff and department directors are really hard to get with. It will take sometimes me over a week to get with them. So trying to book, and even Penny, sometimes it takes me a month to get a meeting with Penny. I mean, and then those of you in CMO's office, you don't really know, these are department director offices, so you have to then go to the department director. And so why I love the agenda review is just, you know, this brings down the administrative burden to me, but I'm a part-time commissioner. I looked at the counties you reference. Sedgwick makes over 90,000. Arizona makes over 100,000. Hennepin makes over 100,000. These are counties that are getting paid full-time wages to be here every day to meet. If I was here every day and could meet, and I mean, it would be a whole different story. I'd be totally get rid of agenda review. But just the difficulty that, and I love agenda review because then I hear my colleagues and then I know what to ask. If I just meet with you, I don't often know what to ask because I don't know what's going on in the unincorporated or airport. And then staff, the reason they created agenda review, then staff would be more prepared for the regular agenda and they could gather the information for the regular agenda. So basically having cold agendas, I am often going to be voting on things that I'm not as prepared of, and staff isn't always as prepared of because they don't know all of our questions. So I don't know on that last one, if there was a way to, is there a modified way, you know, that 3 of us, if we want agenda review, there's, you know, at 4 o'clock on Thursday, 3 of us can meet and you line up different staff people on Thursday afternoon, or, you know, so then I can do like speed dating with the different staff or something. I'm just trying to think, because I don't know how I will be able to, you know, even get meetings. You know, the efficiency of agenda review for me is I don't know how I can replicate that on my own.
So with any of these, it looks like you're looking at publishing the agenda on Friday before a meeting, right?
Correct. And I think we could even push that into 10 days prior to a meeting. Yeah,
Yeah, if we could do 10 days, I think that gives ample time. to be able to meet with staff if it is necessary. And it provides enough of a lead time for the public to know what's coming. I think they'll frankly appreciate it more so than having things only 2 days in advance of a meeting.
Is that work days or calendar days?
I believe it's calendar days. Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to say a whole lot, but the first thing I would say is just tell me the rules and I'll play the game. And that's kind of how I operate, but I know there's other situations for other commissioners that aren't in the same situation that I'm in. But I would want it to be a pilot. I want to be able to review. I don't know that I want to say the pilot is 12 months. You know, again, I think the review, if it's 6 months, the pilot could be 6 months, and just staff would need to be prepared for if there's major concerns, we have to make adjustments. The one thing I do think could be a possibility, it may not play into it, and it's not that big a deal anyway, I don't think, but the chairman might have to call special meetings more often than what we're used to. But again, that wouldn't be a huge change to us because all of us sitting on this dais are used to coming in here on a weekly basis anyway. So that's my thoughts.
Well, and I appreciate that. I think, and I appreciate the idea of maybe doing a 6-month pilot, like a pre-World Cup and then post-World Cup. You know, yeah, right. But also, if we're going to be having a meeting every week and we aren't going to do a charter resolution and go with A or B, that we'd still have that mechanism every week to be able to take action on an emergent item that otherwise may come on one of those routine weeks, but we'd still have the meeting there that if we needed to address it, there would still be a scheduled meeting to be able to do so. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is that working now? I apologize. Yeah. Okay. Couple of questions about the comparables. Do any of those communities, do they have a committee structure that allows there to be a more casual venting of issues and actions? And was that included in your time consumption measures?
Yeah, there are some communities that have some version of committees. It's pretty inconsistent how they're used or how they're structured, but some of those 12 do have committee structures.
But did you include that time consumption in?
No,
you
we
didn't.
did not.
Okay. Are the sizes of those bodies 7 as we are, or do they vary?
Yeah, those vary in size. These communities were picked because we typically do comparisons with these communities.
Okay. The question about cold agendas, that's not a new one, Mr. Chair. And I'm trying to express this in a respectful way. When you've been around as long as I have, a cold agenda is not that problematic because you generally know the flow and or who to go to get questions. What I have been told, and maybe Commissioner Brewer, and I'm not trying to put her on the spot, but for newer members or new members to have that agenda review, to understand the issue, to get the background is more beneficial. And especially, even for me, when a new issue that has not been vetted and talked about and is understood process-wise, that cold agenda, or excuse me, that agenda review process does have help, or is helpful. And kind of like Commissioner Fast, I learn a lot from my other commissioners. I mean, I do try to study and understand what's going on, but oftentimes Commissioner Hanslick will ask a question, or I hadn't looked at it from that perspective, and I need to understand it. And that's the value for me of having agenda review. So I don't know if it's possible to have I can't remember what Commissioner Fast called it, but
Speed department director, speed dating.
the speed dating, because I do ask questions of departments. Even with that briefing, I suspect I may ask more.
So, do you mind if I build on that real quick?
Please.
So, there are several of us that request meetings with Aaron Witt. Well, and it won't be Aaron Witt anymore, but let's say it's Susan Pekarik. And if Susan Pekarik is spending 6 or 7 hours coming here on the week before an item, even after agenda review, that happens. So if we were to maybe as commissioners set a time where Susan Pekarik will be available in the BOCC chambers at 10 to 12 or whatever on a weekly basis, that could even find an additional efficiency here in that she wouldn't have to come 7 different times to meet with commissioners before a meeting. And it would create one meeting for her as opposed to 7. And that might actually be really helpful. And if you were to have an agenda available on a, let's say, Wednesday or Thursday, have a couple days to digest it, and then on, say, a Monday or a Tuesday, have Susan Pekarik available for whichever commissioner feels like they need a special meeting with Susan Pekarik. That saves her time and the time of whatever the ACM is that may be also meeting with each commissioner with Susan Pekarik at a given time. So, interesting thought. Go ahead.
And Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the comment of 10 calendar days, but you back out weekends, holidays, vacations, and accessibility. And sometimes those agendas, they get packed. So that does create a little bit of a burden, I would suggest, on commissioners to try to work in that time as well as staff.
And we all dedicate our time to being here, even though we all have additional responsibilities, whether family, work, or otherwise. And so, to Commissioner Meyer's point, let's establish the rules and see if we can adhere to them. I believe Commissioner Hanslick was next.
Thank you. It seems to me that one of the key questions that for this body is, do we want agenda review or not? Because as I look at these 4 options, there's really only one option that provides for agenda review. That would be A. So if we want to have agenda review, or I guess the other option is this speed dating kind of thing, which frankly doesn't appeal to me. But then if we want agenda review, then we need to look at option A. If we are willing to forego agenda review or try it without agenda review, then we have other options. The other question I had is, what, you said we would have to change, we'd have to have a charter resolution for C and D?
No, for A and B.
Oh, for A and B, okay. Because does agenda review not count as a meeting?
Correct.
Why is that? It's still a meeting.
It is not considered conducting business.
There's no action items.
Right. Yeah.
What if we added one action item?
Chair and Commissioners.
No, seriously,
looking at what is transaction of business is the key operative phrase if you're transacting business. And so the agenda review is reviewing the items, you're discussing what's coming on, preparing for your meetings, but you're not necessarily moving it forward as you would see as a business item.
Okay.
So with whatever option that we take here, we always have the option, correct, Ms. Trent, that we could table items if we feel that if we're seeing them for the first time per se, and we need additional time and study, we have that within our rules of order that we can table items to a date certain to be able to have that extra time for study or consideration, right?
Chair, that is correct. And also, I want to add on, minutes would be business of the board, so those could be added as regular, general items as well. And I would say consent agenda too, but we take things off, so that's where that runs a different direction.
Sure, I understand. And if we were to have additional staff time and bandwidth, and with one of the purposes behind this consideration is more committees of the whole, we could study items that would be coming before us in committees of the whole, and therefore have time for increased conversation and digestion on those issues that do require a little more time, right?
Yes.
I'm getting nods. Good enough. Commissioner Brewer, you haven't had a chance yet.
I wanted to hear from all my more seasoned, see, I'm not commissioners, because you guys have been around for longer and have been immersed in what has worked and what has not worked for you. So I appreciate all that, and actually that's helped refine maybe some of the thoughts and questions that I have. So we know that A and B right now, as presented, would constitute an additional lift of some type of change to make it permissible. It sounds as though A could potentially be done, and I'm looking at our legal counsel, Ms. Trent, could potentially be done if you simply add to the week that there's an agenda review, that we take action on minutes. So minutes is something we take action on every week, but the balance of the agenda would be agenda review on 1 week, and then the alternating week, a business agenda. So if there was a contemplation of option A, that would be a way to do it without having to make a change to our charter.
Chair and Commissioner Brewer, that is correct, and you could also add executive sessions. Those are part of your business meetings too. But you could put those in off weeks if we can, with immediate.
So if you took option A, right now, if you have a business meeting 1 week, then the next week you have agenda review. Agenda review does not constitute a statutory requirement of an actual meeting, so it's not fulfilling the need of meeting weekly officially. So we'd have to make a change in, what's the vehicle, what's the item we would have to change? Is it a change in our charter? Is it a change? What's the technical term that we'd have to change if we chose option A or B?
We would have to have a charter resolution in order to change it from every other week instead of weekly. Currently, state statute requires you to meet weekly, and so you'd be exercising your home rule charter, so that's the charter resolution, in order to deviate from the state statute.
And my understanding is there are counties throughout the state of Kansas who have taken action on that and who have had a charter resolution to charter out of that demand of meeting weekly.
Yeah, Sedgwick County is an example of that. They meet 3 Wednesdays of the month.
Thank you. But if we wanted an agenda review and we didn't want to do a charter resolution, then the agenda review would still constitute an actual business meeting if we took actual business as a part of that meeting, and minutes is taking actual business as a part of that meeting.
That's correct. Transition of, the whole phrase is transaction of business, and that would entail taking action on your minutes.
Okay, so thank you for that clarity. My other question is, if we chose, so I'm going to step back. I concur, I'd like to see us do something different. I concur with both Commissioner Myers and Chair Kelly that I think a 6-month pilot, because that constitutes 24 meetings, is probably a good length of time. I think 12 months seems long, especially if something is clunky or not working as well as we would like it to work. So 6 months. And why I'd like this to do something different, spending most of my life on your side of the role of administrating either an elected or appointed body. and those bodies weren't meeting weekly, if you're spending all your time getting ready to discuss what you need to do and then making decisions on what you need to do, and you're doing that weekly, you really shorten up your capacity to implement what you need to do. And we're a highly functioning county, and we accomplish a lot of things, but we are making that really hard to do. And are we making it harder than it needs to be as effective as we are? So that's just my little analysis. So I want to look at an option that affords us the bandwidth that we're really trying to all gain. I love the fact that I would get meeting materials earlier, because I want to come to a meeting prepared. I want to know the questions. I want to understand the materials enough so I can ask the questions that I want to know information about, but also reflect what I feel my residents want to know information about. And it's breathtakingly hard to do when the packet is coming out. And so the public understands, because I'm a public official, I'm not going to get an official packet before the public gets an official packet, because once you give it to me, in effect, it's public. And so I'm going to get it when it's been posted on the website, which is Tuesday afternoons for Thursday meetings. And I don't feel I can be as effective as I'd like to be, because if I have a question, I have a breathtakingly short amount of time to connect with a staff person prior to a meeting to have that conversation, which is why I like agenda reviews, because then I do have a little bit more time because the agenda review packet comes out at the same time. So my question is, if we give ourselves more bandwidth, either with A or with D, in the D option, what would become the litmus test for what would go on a study session or a committee of the whole session, if that makes sense? Because, and what I'm saying is right now, it's the really big things that come on a committee of whole or a study session, because the not as big things can be taken care of at an agenda review, and then by the following week, we're ready to carry it forward. So does the litmus test of what rises to the level of a COW, a committee of the whole, or a study session change if we were to choose option D? So that we can kind of split the difference of not doing speed dating, right, where you're trying to get what are typically agenda review items out in front of everybody in a small group meetings or small individual meetings, but having a more informal setting and a little bit more, maybe more items that meet the litmus of a study or a committee of the whole. Am I making sense?
I understand what you're saying.
Thank God.
No, I
20
don't.
minutes later.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think that partial answer there is maybe, but I think that would also be up to you all to maybe drive that standard and expectation.
Can I weigh in here as well? So the litmus test that we use now for CALs and study sessions is if we need more discussion, and study sessions, we don't ask for direction. CALs, we're close to a policy level, but we need a little bit of direction to narrow it down to bring something forward. I don't think it drastically changes, but it does free up other things, and maybe those are additional study sessions, because we've talked about during the budget process that you wanted to hear more from directors outside of the budget process. So technically, I guess those could be study sessions. It would allow for more, but like Adam said, I mean, I would have to adjust it to you, but it does allow for hearing more from departments.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Byrd.
I just had one,
Go ahead,
if I
go
may.
ahead.
So right now, what is something that goes to agenda review? There's many things that go to agenda review that have never been to a COW or study session. That's what I'm trying to get at, is will the bar lower for a few more things going to a committee of the whole meeting, because I'm not going to see it in an agenda review, and you want an efficient way to get something out and kind of us ready for it before it goes to action. That's what I'm looking for, so that we're being, because when I met with Mr. Norris about this proposal and about how the research was on use of time in other jurisdictions, as he shared with Commissioner Ashcraft, there's minutia of we don't know how often or how much staff is meeting with somebody who has 38 agenda items and is giving each agenda item an average of 2 minutes consideration. Either they're making decisions that concern me because they don't have enough time to know, or they're having more time behind the scenes to have that discussion, so they're ready to make a 2-minute decision that doesn't need a 10-minute discussion about it.
I see your question. I think we'll probably have to try it with a pilot. But right now, if there is something, even if it's on agenda review, because all items are on agenda review right now, if it's something that's not a study session or CAL, but that it needs action eventually with an agenda review, and it's something that needs a little bit more discussion, we offer pre-meetings. I mean, there's always the opportunity for pre-meetings, but we'll proactively offer. And so I think without agenda review for those type of items that might need a little bit more, we just probably have to do the trial and error.
So let me try to bring to this, grow off of the points made by Commissioner Burr. There's some items that come on agenda review that I think we all would like a preview for. I think there's other items that are on agenda review that we could handle with enough time in advance and seeing it on an action agenda. Some of those are contracts. Whether they're term and supply or specific contracts, if they go through our normal processes and there's nothing abnormal about those, to me, those are ones that we can see that they've gone through the process, we know the bidder, very good. I can see those the first time and move on. If they're more unique policy situations, sometimes you want an opportunity to discuss those in advance, get a little more background in the intervening time period, and then vote on it in the future. I think whether we're calling it agenda review or we're handling those kind of items in a CAL, we're kind of talking about the same thing here, right? Because I don't think every item requires an agenda review, items that we do see on an agenda review, sometimes then we take the opportunity to get into the weeds to that we don't necessarily need to, and that's on us. And I think that's how sometimes you may differentiate between the 2 minutes and the 15 minutes that we may spend on things, is that because it's before us, we take the opportunity to get down into the staff level territory that is a use of time that maybe could be better spent on other things. That's my personal opinion. And so whether we go with option A, D, or this E that I think we're kind of evolving here, whether you call it agenda review or not, I don't know that we need to have every single item that would come before us on an action agenda always come before us on an agenda review. In that way, be able to capture some of the bandwidth that we're trying to capture here to get back to staff or to spend more on policy level issues that require that additional debate, understanding, and consideration. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for explaining that, because that was some of the comments I wanted to make, because it seems like all the big items have always either been in a study session or a CAL. And that was something that more of us wanted, was a study session and CALs. So I'm assuming anything that was big with the airport, those things are going to come before that in those study sessions. I guess for me, A and B, I would not touch any charter stuff at this point in time. We've got enough stuff going on without creating that. To me, that just seems like another whole mess. And I guess I hear what Commissioner, I hear what you're saying about the E, but I guess, to be honest, I think it's really in D. It's just a matter of rewording it a little bit because you still have the study sessions. And the other thing I like is getting the package earlier. It allows me more time. I have always felt the majority of the items between having the CALs and the study sessions, I've got what I need, so I don't meet with the staff on a regular basis, but if I have a question, I'm gonna call them. I do feel that the staff probably gets torn a lot having agenda review. You have CALs, you have study sessions, you have agenda review, and people are still getting called in for meetings. So would that be correct statement that D just getting, and what, I lost her name. Julie, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Julie?
Brewer.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't D pretty much what she's talking about? Just changing the, to a 6 months? Now I've
Go
lost
ahead,
it.
Adam.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it would be changing D to a 6-month and maybe adding some component of reviewing bigger items to that one instead of augmenting A, it's really changing D a little bit, I think.
So if we augment D, call it D.2,
There you go.
and say that on any given week, that we have on those, let's call them light weeks, that we'll have a business session for minutes, et cetera, to qualify under our statutory requirement. But then we'll have a scheduled committee of the whole. And at that committee of the whole, just similar to the committee of the whole that we had today, we can handle multiple topics that require that additional time and focus for the following week. That would be our more robust week, as well as committees of the whole on topics that aren't coming forward in the next week, but that we want to spend time for policy consideration. Is that making sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, yes.
Okay. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the difference between alternate A and D2 is alternate A allows for agenda review, alternate D2 does not. Is that correct?
If you're calling it agenda review, yes, but A also requires a charter resolution.
Well, unless we put an action item such as minutes and or executive sessions, and if you put an action item, that would not preclude additional action items if needed for immediate response. Is that correct?
If you plan to have every item, like our traditional agenda review that we've done for however long everybody's been here, and every single item, as opposed to a committee of the whole structure that would handle the more robust items, then that, I guess, is the difference.
Okay.
We can also,
Right?
yeah, and we can also use study sessions too. Those are valuable
Absolutely.
formats to have a more informal conversation about things and just get general consensus and guidance and feedback.
Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, would there be, I know I'm pushing this agenda review, but I mean, one of the reasons I brought forth the whole salary thing is that there should be more people who work that can serve. Women with single children, single women, women with children, that you have caregiving and that you have to balance work, family, and commission. And it is so hard to have a job. And there's very few jobs you can find to connect with your commission duties. And so would there be a way maybe just to have agenda review once a month? Because when I do get with Penny, which is so hard, my question to her always is what's coming up in the next month, the next 2 months? And I'm always on Penny and Julie, what's our cows? So because I plan out my whole month with my work on during the next month, what staff do I need to meet with? And I guess I would just maybe like an agenda review, maybe it's not all staff presentations, or if it's a manager's report, what are the items coming up? And so that Michelle and I can start preparing in the next month all these staff meetings, because department directors are hard to get meetings with. And then you have to connect with the county manager's office, and they may not have, like, sometimes, and a lot of times it's 2 weeks out before I can get the connection between my schedule, Adam's schedule, you know, and then a department director. It is that scheduling, and that is where I'm just seeing that I won't be informed and my constituents won't have the representation. I do my research. I don't just meet with the person, then I try to go through our archives and the commission archives. I try to go, sometimes I go in legislative research, and I don't know, would that be an option? I'm asking my colleagues maybe once a month that we just get a listing of the upcoming issues.
Commissioner Burr?
So I appreciate your thoughts, Commissioner Fast, because I will share, especially as Commissioner Ashcraft, you know, indicated, being a newer commissioner, that agenda reviews have been really valuable. I want to center this, though, with, I think each of us in our elected, and it's valuable for a number of reasons, and I just want to highlight one of the reasons that many of you have shared. It's valuable because each of us have different areas of expertise that we bring to the table. So when an issue is brought to all of us and we're discussing it, it allows me as a commissioner to hear different perspectives at the dais, which is what I think in effective policy making is what we want to see. Because if we all thought and believed the same things in the same way and had the same background, right, we wouldn't be reflective as reflective as the community as we can be when we all have different thoughts, opinions, and educate each other. Having said all that, I also find it very hard as a commissioner that if there's a couple different initiatives that are maybe specific to my district or specific to a population that's a need that I want to work on, I have a hard time finding enough bandwidth to really move that forward because I'm in this constant meeting-itis of week after week after week. So if I'm finding that difficult in my role, I have to believe that there's a heavy burden that administrative staff or that our professional staff are also finding between policy making and policy implementation and being able to, and also forward strategic planning so that you're laying the runway for the next thing down the road. So in my commitment to wanting to see additional bandwidth for that part to happen, what I'd like to see, and this is a question I have circled, if we went with D, and one of the things that really allowed me to think about D as maybe more optimal than A, and I walked in the room thinking A would be more optimal. I really appreciate the chair recognizing that if we did weekly meetings with a routine agenda, skinny agenda one week, the heavy agenda the next week, so the skinny agenda week we can do more study sessions or cows. But taking that format, you made a very important point. It allows us to put on as a cold agenda an emerging issue that could not wait another week. And this format allows that mechanism a lot more elegantly than if we took a different option. And I think that's a very valid point if we have to be nimble. I think the other thing it allows to bring the residents along, which is an important component of how this all works, because we're still meeting weekly, but they're seeing how that changes a little bit. Having said all that, I have to ask, could any of these changes affect our rules of order in the sense of what normally gets on a consent or doesn't, what normally rises to the level of a committee of a whole or doesn't? Is there any, and maybe it wasn't appropriate to look at that into, what direction the body wants to go to, but I would see if there's any, if we give you direction, say it's D, then we need to look, is there any impact to rules of orders that might need to be tweaked? Because what I could see from a Commissioner Fash, from myself, from any of us for whom the agenda review has been a good use of our time and we'd like to see is we may make a request to chair to have something go on a cow that maybe normally wouldn't raise to the level of a cow just to get a little bit more conversation. And then technically on the inside, is there internally, to speak to Commissioner Fast's concern, is there a way making these changes doesn't change the internal preparation for upcoming meetings, right? So if you know you have a list of things that are coming up, a running list, even though we know it's a moving list, it's a moving target, it's not written in stone, is there a way to get kind of a running update of things that we anticipate coming before us in the next few weeks? And then that way, it's not in an agenda review, it's not on the agenda that's coming up in the next meeting, but 2 weeks from now, I know there's gonna be an RFP is coming due for a wastewater project. We're gonna give you a heads up that that'll be coming up in the next couple weeks on an agenda. Then it would give the commissioners who maybe wanna have a meeting on that, the bandwidth to get that set up if it takes a little bit of time to do it. Is that a compromise that we could do? That it would allow us to take D, but still have kind of a running idea of what's coming up?
Ms. Trent.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Brewer, prior to this Cal, I did have an at-length meeting with Assistant County Manager Norris where we did go through the legal review of it, including your rules of order, the charter. We revisited everything thoroughly before we brought these options before you. So to answer your question, you are fine with your amended rules of order. And let's say, for instance, something just came out of the blue because you're adopting it as a resolution and the chair has the ability to deviate from those rules in conjunction with this resolution. That will cover us from a legal perspective as you move forward with processes. As to the agenda review, you are, my understanding, and I think Assistant County Manager Norris can give more on this, is that you're getting your agenda still 10 days in advance of the meeting. You will have the opportunity to review that, and actually I would submit to you, you'll have more opportunities to talk to us and to ask questions with those weekly meetings that the county manager does with each of you, with our weekly managers. And I think she has that available if you want weekly county managers as a standing meeting, just like I do for board appointments. And if you take advantage of that, I think that gets you us in, that we can bring people to those meetings for you to discuss those items.
I just want to clarify. I offer regular meetings, they're not weekly.
I'm sorry.
But 6 of 7 commissioners take me up on it, so.
Mr. Norris, I almost gave you a demotion there.
I was going to point out that if we are able to post the agenda 10 days in advance for especially the heavier agenda, that would be the Tuesday prior to your light agenda, so you would know what's coming for that following week by for the Thursday meeting that's upcoming, if I'm making sense explaining that, so.
No, it does make sense. Thank you. Commissioner Allenbrand.
Chair, I feel like that I would put some of this responsibility onto the chair because he knows at this point, most of the time, if we need to have a COW or a study session to add that in. And the staff has really taken a lot of time in putting this together, and change is very difficult. I know that if I have a question on anything, if I can't get a hold of Penny, if I can't get a hold of Adam, I just go down the chain and I find somebody. So, I'm wondering if you could, Chair, put somewhat of a motion. I can change the one I have to 6 months. I feel like we just need to try this. I mean, the staff has recommended this. It includes more study sessions and COWs. I think we can trust you that if there's something that we need to have more time, would everybody be comfortable with that?
So let me try to articulate it and you tell me if I'm doing it right. So we move to bring forward an action item to consider option D with the amendment that we'd provide agendas 10 days in advance and have additional opportunity to learn of emergent items from staff on a, let's call it, monthly basis.
Chair, we have a motion prepared that says that exactly, almost of what you're saying.
Is that D? Just changing it to 6 months?
Change. we knew the 10 days really important that you,
So is that the motion that Commissioner Allen Brandt has in front of her?
yes.
Well, why don't you go ahead and
Take
make
a
that
stab.
motion then? I'll withdraw mine. and
Should
you
I
make
go
yours.
ahead and include the calendar in that as well?
We haven't discussed the calendar.
Okay. All right, excuse me. I move the staff to place option D for the 2026 board meeting calendar on the board's December 4th, 2025 business meeting agenda for consideration, which establishes an alternate bi-weekly structure between action-focused business meetings and preparatory and routine business meetings, including committee of the whole meetings and study sessions with business meeting agendas being posted 10 days prior to a business meeting as a pilot for 6 months.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second, Hanslick.
So moved by Commissioner Allen Brandt, seconded by Commissioner Hanslick. Commissioner Ashcraft. Question? Comment?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I realize that this motion is procedural to then bring it forward for us at the first meeting in December, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay, and I respect the procedural process. I have reservations. I don't see the case for giving up agenda review at this point, particularly based on the staff's analysis. And I realize that the majority of my colleagues want a process improvement. But I look at this at the expense of understanding and the ability to fully comprehend what I would call the ongoing day-to-day responsibilities of commissioners on the oversight of management and programmatic responsibilities. So my vote will reflect that concern.
Commissioner Fast.
Yeah, I can't support this either. I mean, staff maybe offer meetings, but it's weeks to get into these staff. I try all the time. I would still like to see maybe like some vehicle put in there that we get then, because it sounds like there's support from the commissioners that on the routine items that you in the packet list of what are all the upcoming items so that we can start arranging these schedules, because like I said, it's for me, it's weeks, to meet with, trying to coordinate department directors with managers, and then you have to meet with more than one department director, where now we get several people. And so I wish we would at least have, this could be one agenda review, which could go over, the upcoming things for the month. But I don't see that support, so I would at least ask that we're all given for the month what's coming up and who the contact people are, because I don't always know in planning who do I meet with, and so forth.
All right, so I see no further questions at this time. I'd ask clerk to call the roll, please. Oh, you didn't get, go ahead, Commissioner Brewer.
My apologies, I failed to use the new IT's opportunities. I don't know if this suggestion alleviates the concerns of my fellow commissioners, and I'll be candid, I have grown to really appreciate, and as you know, in my first 6 months, I tried to say in commissioner comments for residents who had concerns that we were moving too quickly, inviting them to always be a part of agenda review so they could be more part of the real-time process of how we get to ready to take an action on an item. But I do wonder, with both the benefit of getting the agenda 10 days in advance, and then maybe this suggestion, maybe management reports at the end of a meeting can give us a look ahead of things coming up as a way to have an understanding, or if we, I think you were going to make a suggestion, Chair, around having some type of running calendar that can be updated so folks can have a look ahead, be it a COW, a study session, or larger business items coming up, something like that. I think that would be a good companion piece to if option D moves forward, just to allow for planning purposes for commissioners, especially commissioners who, as Commissioner Fast has really underscored, and there's more than one commissioner up here who is doing this role and holding down, and also is employed elsewhere, as these are contemplated to be part-time positions. So I think that's maybe a suggestion, that's maybe a compromise that may or may not land with folks.
Mr. Norris, I can see you debating whether or not to bite.
I think we can try to assemble some kind of list that's kind of a running tally of what's going on. Sometimes things pop up, though,
I
unfortunately.
will add that if we have a list, some of those things aren't completely ready for prime time. So if you start calling staff before we present them, it's going to defeat the purpose. So I get the idea of like the cows at the study sessions that we can plan for, and then other things pop up for agenda items. It's a little bit more of a challenge. We'll do our best to preview things. Flexibility will be needed.
My apologies, Penny, but the key thing for me is Mr. Norris's comment. If you get the agenda 10 days in advance, you're going to know when you come in the next Thursday what the issues are, and staff's going to be here, and we can talk about it. So anyway, we've been around the world here. Would the clerk call the roll?
Commissioner Fast.
Aye.
Commissioner Myers.
Myers, aye.
Commissioner
Wait,
Brewer.
wait. Sorry, I'm no.
You can change your vote.
Okay.
We're going to go down the roll. Keep going.
Keep going. Commissioner Brewer.
Brewer, aye.
Commissioner Hanslick.
Hanslick, aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
No.
Commissioner Allenbrand.
Allenbrand, aye.
Chairman Kelly.
Aye. Would anyone like to change their vote?
I'm sorry about that. No, sorry. I mean, I do want to change my vote. My vote is no.
5 in favor and 2 against. Is that consistent with your count?
It is.
Very good. Thank you very much. This committee of the whole is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What about the calendar?
How about the cow?
Executive session.
We need to
Yeah,
vote on that.
In calendar, we forgot the calendar.
Tell me not to.
We're just going to bring the calendar. Hey, everybody, review the calendar. If you have a problem with it, let me know. We're just going to bring it on December 4th.
So there's that June 25th, there's 3 meetings that do the World Cup, that no meeting. We usually have 2 no meetings.
Yeah, what I'm going to suggest, what if we go ahead and have a meeting placeholder on July 9th?
So we may have a meeting on July 9th.
Yes.
Yeah.
That way, if we don't have it on the 25th of June because of the World Cup, that is a World Cup match day, we'd have it on a possibility of a meeting on July 9th, which right now we're scheduled for no meeting, but that's well after the 4th of July holiday.
Well, no, I mean,
It should be those very last.
So you'd be off 2 meetings, but just move the 2 meetings to one in June, one in July
Yeah.
instead.
Yeah.
2 in July.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to open back up for exec sessions when the clerk is ready to go.
so basically we're saying there's no meeting on the 2nd, and then we have a meeting on the 9th.
Nice
So
job.
we're adding a meeting.
Potentially adding a meeting on
One
July.
is this one, and he's saying this.